everyone. Welcome to our August monthly Kube chat. My name is Danielle, and I'll be acting as your host today. So just to cover off today, we'll be covering some new features we've launched, and we're super excited to dive into them. We will be recording this webinar, so if you can't stay for the whole thing or you want to share it with others, just be on the lookout for an email from me after this call, and we'll be sending out a recording. But I will also include a copy of the deck and some links to various resources we're going to be sharing throughout the webinar, just so you have them. I also wanted to announce that we are doing a giveaway for this webinar. Pretty exciting. So it's open to anyone who registered for the webinar, and the prize is a Real Force mechanical keyboard. So we'll be randomly selecting the winner for that tomorrow, and then we'll reach out to you via email. All right, and then I wanted to cover the agenda. So just for some housekeeping, here's a planned agenda. We're first going to kick it off with some just quick introductions. Then we'll provide a brief recap of features from our 2.0 release, and then we'll dive right into the new features we've released since then. We'll also end with a Q&A. We did receive a bunch of pre-submitted questions, so we'll try to cover as many of those as we can. But if you have any questions throughout, feel free to just drop them in the Q&A feature there on your Zoom, and we'll also cover those at the end. Now, just to give you a little bit of background about Kubecost, for those who might be unfamiliar, we started in early 2019 as an open source tool just to give developers the visibility into their Kubernetes spend. And today we help thousands of teams across companies of all sizes to monitor and reduce their waste while also balancing their cost, performance, and reliability. We're available on AWS, Azure, GCP, and even on-prem Kubernetes. We really, provide you a single pane of glass into your costs that help you, stay educated and make business decisions that you can feel comfortable in. Currently, we're managing about $3 billion in cloud spend, and we work with some leading companies like Adobe, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and we really just help people untangle their cloud bills and take advantage of the incredibly valuable optimization opportunities and help hold teams accountable. And I'm sure that's something we can all relate to because cloud costs often get out of control. And then here at Kubecost, we have about a 60-person team of Kubernetes experts. So, we're always excited to partner with you and help you out, however we can. Next, I wanted to introduce you to our first speaker, Joe. So Joe, he's not just an ordinary Joe. He's the big cheese around here. He's our product marketing manager here at Kubecost, and he's got a really impressive background that spans all over the tech world. So, cybersecurity, cloud computing, fintech, you name it. Joe's products have made life easier for literally millions of people. He's worked with some really, big heavy hitters like, FedEx, Home Depot, Microsoft, Apple. And feel free to connect with Joe. I dropped his LinkedIn here so you can go chat with him about all things product marketing and, cloud product related. And then our next speaker is Carl. So Carl is our senior software engineer here at Kubecost, and he really knows his stuff. He's been in the game for over a decade. So he's also worked with some pretty big names that I'm sure you'll recognize here. But he's not just about writing code. His real knack is for the complex stuff. So he likes distributed systems, security, cloud architecture, the sort of stuff that probably make some of us kind of scratch our heads, but he is a pro at all of it. So also dropped his LinkedIn here. So if you want to go connect with him and talk about all things Kubernetes related and beyond, feel free to reach out to him. And with that, I will pass it over to our speakers today.
Thanks, Dee. Carl, it is fantastic to be with you today. And it's great to have everybody in the audience that's viewing live, everybody that's watching on demand in the future. Hello from the past. I've just realized that it's like halfway through August, which blows me away, right? Kids are starting school. It seems like the 2.0 release that we did, which is arguably probably the most feature-packed release that Kubecost has ever put out into the world, was almost 6 months now, or over 6 months ago now. We're going to do a real quick recap of all the good things that were in that. It was a huge release, kind of a level up for the entire platform. Across like 4 different pillars of observability, optimization, operability, and governance, we launched a handful of like really big tier one new features and capabilities. So, Carl, did you want to jump into maybe some
Yeah,
of what those features are and at a high level, like what they do?
absolutely. So under the category of observability, we have collections, which do exactly what it sounds like, lets you categorize your infrastructure and your workloads inside of your environments and be able to put them together. Great for doing things like chargeback or just understanding which departments or which projects are using certain things. Advanced network monitoring. This is much deeper than the kind of monitoring that you get from your cloud provider. We can actually show you like which workloads are talking through those dreaded NAT gateways, so you can control your spend that way, and also improve real-time cost estimation. So we're doing a much better job of giving you information faster than we can get it out of the detailed billing data from your cloud provider.
That's great. So under observability, one of the things that I was in product management for the last couple of decades, and it was always a challenge to try and understand what the cost of my product was, what the cost of supporting an individual customer was, being able to forecast costs if we were to expand, if we were to need to, scale either horizontally or vertically. And collections is like the feature that I wish I had for the last 20 years as a product person in SaaS and in software. It lets me pull together all of these disparate costs and then look at them through different kind of business dynamics lenses, right? To understand like what's the costs associated with a cost center or with a certain project or with a product. Really cool stuff.
It's been really powerful for us, even just here at Kubecost, for keeping track of which projects are using which infrastructure and how much that's costing us on a monthly basis.
It's a powerful way to allocate costs. So under optimization, we've got a new feature called Actions, which is all about automated actions. It's like right in the name there, right? So this allows you to automate some activities around right sizing inside of a cluster. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're going to touch on a little bit on it. We're going to touch on it more later, but it was the beginning of it. We've since expanded upon it, and we'll bring that up a little bit later on today.
Exciting.
And then under operability, this is the one feature where its name is not exactly what it does. Aggregator is the new backend system that we have for data collection and storage inside of Kubecost. It basically allows us to deal with significantly more data coming in from the agents, from the detailed billing information, and parsing through that as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible to get answers out so that the dashboard pages that you're looking at load as quickly as possible.
Faster, stronger, better.
Yep.
And the last one, governance, right? Everybody loves golden paths and guardrails. Governance is an important part of managing and optimizing cloud costs. We've got a couple of new features under that. The ability to do forecasting, right? To be able to project out into the future what an anticipated spend is going to be based on workloads and resources and what's being requested. And then another great feature, which is some advanced anomaly detection powered by some really cool machine learning algorithms to be able to help you identify and put an end to anomalous things that could otherwise be driving cost at the end of the month if you don't catch them early enough. So yeah, stop it before it starts to cost you big money.
And then we've dropped a link in the chat for a blog post to more details about all of these features, and also the previous webinar, which had a lot more information about this. If you're looking for more on that, those resources are readily available.
Awesome. Yeah, please do go check out the 2.0 release notes, both the blog post and that webinar, packed with some great technical information about everything that was included in that gigantic release. But that was not where we stopped for the year, right? That was a long time ago, it seems like. We've continued to innovate, we've continued to build, and we have released multiple new features and capabilities throughout the year up until now. And we're going to talk about some of those cool new features and capabilities a little bit more in depth, starting with Green Ops, which, is not just for fun anymore, right, Carl? I guess in some places of the world, this isn't optional.
This is
monitoring.
correct. This is not optional. So in the European Union, you have to report your carbon usage, and part of that is your type 2 carbon usage, which basically covers all of your hosting. So what we did is we partnered with a third party to put together a system that allows you to estimate in real time what your cloud costs, what your cloud carbon utilization is inside of Kubecost. If you want some more resources on why this is important, we're going to drop a link in chat to a talk from Adrian Cockcroft, former VP at Amazon, that he did at Monitorama in 2022 about monitoring carbon. Goes into a lot more detail of like why this is important. Yeah, there is a reason why our logo is green, and that's because we care about this stuff quite a bit.
Indeed, it's not just for the feel goods, right? It's
Right.
actually to help a lot of companies continue to operate and exist. But green ops, reducing our carbon footprint is something that I think the entire tech sector is really kind of tuned into. This is a hot and exciting thing, is reducing our footprint and making the earth a cleaner place. And we're not just pulling the numbers out of clean thin air, right? Is that the saying maybe? We're not just making up the numbers about what resources in AWS or GCP or Azure cost. We've partnered with like the preeminent expert in the universe on carbon cost allocation, right?
Yeah. So we've partnered with ThoughtWorks, and we're using their cloud carbon footprint integration framework to provide this information. And if we can jump to the next slide, we can show you a little bit of what that looks like. So basically it boils down to, it's built right into the assets pages and the allocations pages now. You will notice that some of the things are labeled as NA. We're not trying to hide anything. It's more that we don't have information. So specifically for networking features and for like the cluster management, we have absolutely no idea what those are running on inside of your cloud provider's infrastructure. So there's no way for us to estimate the carbon usage on it. And again, these are estimate numbers, but they are real-time estimate numbers. So you can do things like, how does this workload perform on an x86 instance types versus an ARM instance type? What kind of impact does it make if we turn off our GPU lurk loads over the weekend when no one's using them? All of those sorts of things. You can see that to get a much better idea of what your total carbon cost utilization is going to be in the detailed bill at the end of the month.
Fantastic metric to be able to use when making decisions about how much resources are really needed, how efficient you're being in your overall operations. This should be the kind of things being talked about in boardrooms, in investor meetings, in quarterly reports. And we've got some tools that help bring some real hard and fast numbers to that for our partners and our customers. It's great. All right, what do we got next that we're focusing on?
Next is going to be our efficiency dashboard. So this is relatively new. We've started by looking at what the allocations are listed inside of the deployments that you're running inside of your Kubernetes workloads, and kind of breaking that out into idle resources by workload and idle resources by cluster. The primary driver for this is the product that just hit 1.0 today, which would be Carpenter. So if you are using Carpenter, this is a great way of being able to determine in real time if you're using Carpenter effectively, and if it is lowering your costs or actually making the situation worse. Carpenter is somewhat difficult to configure, but this can give you real-time insights into what's going on, what you can do to make adjustments. Going back to green ops, like what happens if we use smaller instances and scale out automatically, as opposed to having larger instances that are sitting idle for a longer period of time. Those sorts of things, it all kind of ties together.
When I first saw this feature, these efficiency views, the thing that struck me was that this is like a KPI dashboard. This is like maybe the KPI dashboard for a FinOps team. With these views, you're able to see where your wastage is coming from, and you're able to track it over time, month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. And it really helps tell an impactful visual story about how you're doing with your efficiency. Are you getting better? Are you getting worse? Are you finding that efficiency goes up because everybody pays attention to it for a little bit of time, and then everybody kind of goes back to bad old habits and practices and forgets to turn things off, and leaves clusters orphaned out there, costing them money. And then you see it spike down again because somebody picks up the phone and says, what are you guys doing over there spending all of our cash? So I love that this is really draws attention to this important business metric of efficiency, and then does that over time so that you can see, how are my different development teams doing with efficiency? I can look at this by a number of different contexts that help improve waste reduction over the long haul. Really powerful stuff.
And then this is what what the efficiency dashboard looks like. So just go into the report section, the efficiency report is listed there, and we break it down by the workload idle, where basically what's happening here is we can look at the real-time utilization of how much memory and CPU you're using versus what you requested in your allocation when you created your workload, and then also summing all of that up to the infrastructure. So if your workload is extremely efficient, but you're running on a machine that is significantly larger than what you need, your infrastructure idle will be a lower number, and you can see what those costs are, again, in real time.
Fantastic. Next feature is Kubecost Actions. Very exciting feature, right? And I think this is one that I also look at as an opportunity to really drive efficiency and optimization and reduce cloud spend where it's unnecessary, and even contribute to the green ops initiatives for an organization. So how does Kubecost Actions work?
So this ties into the recommendations that we put in the last release. And so now you can basically schedule those recommendations to occur on a regular basis. We have three major categories that are falling into this. One of them is automated resizing requests. So again, looking at the real-time data of what you're doing, of what your workloads are actually doing, we can change the annotations on your workloads to correctly match their memory quotas and their disk quotas in order for you to right size your workload for what is happening, right size the allocation for your workload, excuse me. Cluster Turndown and Namespace Turndown. Basically, the easiest thing to use for something like this is what we were talking about before. If you're not doing anything on the weekends, you might as well have an automated task that can find all of your workloads and all of your clusters that you're not using on the weekend and turn them down. That was going to make a dramatic savings over time, especially for larger instances or things that are using much more expensive cloud resources like GPUs.
Fantastic. You take all of that saved cash and you go and invest in really premium snacks for the engineering break room, right? These automated kind of hands-free methods of ensuring that you're continually optimizing for cost and to reduce waste is really powerful. It kind of solves for a couple of problems that come to mind. One is every time humans insert themselves into processes, there's always room for error and mistakes and things like that to happen. So having some automation pick up some of that activity and offload it to reduce the toil on developers is, first of all, like a great developer experience. Less things to do, fewer things to have to remember, fewer pieces of string tied around fingers to remember to do things. But it also happens at machine speed, right? So it's not this lag effect of discovering that something needs to be right-sized, talking about it with the team to understand if right-sizing it is the right thing to do, and then actually going and performing those changes and configuration updates. Being able to have some automated actions that do that for you is a huge time saver and can reduce the number of failed deployments due to things like vastly under provisioning a resource or forgetting to have it in the first place. So really cool automation features there.
Yep. And this is just the start. We have a bunch more planned for future releases, but this is where we're beginning the journey.
is here at the cluster level. Yep.
Yep.
Fantastic. Another great feature that we wanted to talk about here that is also new. It is kind of the first big step in a direction. Carl, tell us a little bit about our external cost plugins.
Yeah, so we've implemented external. We have a lot of people who are working with other pieces of software, not necessarily resources inside the cloud, but external SaaS solutions that have costs associated with them. And there's been a lot of requests for how can we manage and monitor this inside of Kubernetes, or excuse me, inside of Kubecost. So what we've done is we've integrated a framework inside of our open cost system. So this is available for even the open source version and not just our paid version, where you can tie into other billing systems to get back the information and see that again in as near real time as possible for what's going on. So the first integration we did is with a very large monitoring company, so you can see what your monitoring costs are for your workloads. But other things that could be useful are, say, for example, you're doing transactions through Stripe and you want to see in real time how much money you're getting in versus how much is being collected, because there's always fees involved. This is a great way to do that. We've made this part of our open source system, and we are in fact offering a reward for trying to do integrations with it. And it's not because we're trying to cheap out and not do it. It's more that you as the community have a lot more experience with all of the APIs out there than we can possibly put resources into. So if there's something that you're interested in trying to monitor the costs with, all of this is open source. It always will be, but we are offering a reward of some swag and also actual cash money for folks who are willing to contribute integrations with this.
That's fantastic. So for those of you that have, expensive hobbies like fly fishing or e-bikes or, competitive flight kite flying, whatever it may be, fund those hobbies by building some open source plugins for things like OpenAI or Snowflake or any number of other cloud services or cost drivers that you'd love to be able to slice and dice and allocate like everything else that you're able to do inside of Kubecost. You can visit our GitHub page to learn more about how you can create those and get started with them. And we'd love, we're cheering you on and happy to work with you shoulder to shoulder as you create some cool new plugins that ultimately are going to benefit the whole community of people using OpenCost, using Kubecost Free, and using Kubecost Enterprise. So please take us up on that offer and help us expand this to cover all of those external costs that are out there. And this isn't just for like the usual suspects, cloud services and things like that, right? It's not just for the Snowflakes and the Open AIs. It's for like anything you can dream up that has an API that you can get some billing data out of, correct?
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be something that is even directly attached. I recently found a very cool tool that provides real-time information for power pricing on all the different parts of the US grid. So you could feed that in to see how much your power costs are inside of your cloud infrastructure over time, tying in with the carbon cost as well.
It's great. We're going to start allocating coffee based on dev team and see, who's really driving the costs there.
As long as your coffee pot has an API, we can probably do an integration with it.
I'm sure there's one. There's got to be one out there. Somebody has
several. And then this is what that looks like. So for that integration that we have with Datadog, so you can see we have various clusters inside of this environment, and you can see what the infrastructure costs are and what the index log costs are over the last several days, just to see what the amounts are. And like I said, this can be expanded to any other service that you want to, and we're looking for contributions to this.
Fantastic. What a great batch of features that we've added in the last couple of months. The speed at which we're releasing, the quality of the content of these releases continue to impress me. And, I've been doing it for long enough that I don't want to, put a fine point on the number of years, but this is a fast-moving space that we're in. Kubernetes is something that we're all continuing to like figure out. We're building the plane as we're flying, right? And so it's really exciting to see massive new features and capabilities arrive at the fingertips of our customers and our users, whether that's in free or whether that's in paid. And one thing that we wanted to make clear today, everything that we've talked about today, all of these features are available to both free users and to paid users, right? They're out there for everybody, and we are looking forward to you using them. We're looking forward to getting your feedback. We're looking forward to improving how well they work for you as we continue to iterate and build on this as well. Dee, I think we're ready to look at some questions.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So we did get a number of pre-submitted questions, so I'm going to cover some of those first. And then, Joe, I actually can't pull up the questions that people added to the chat in Zoom, so if you wouldn't mind pulling those up and going through them. But I'll start with a couple pre-submitted ones here. So someone asked, is this version available in EKS add-ons? And then we also had another question, does the free version also offer automated remediation, or is that paid only? So really that's what Joe just covered, but Joe, if you want to go ahead and cover off on that question.
You're right. They are free. They're available in the free version. They're available in Kubecost. They're available in our paid version, obviously. So yes, the answer is a resounding yes on that.
Awesome. And then the next question we had, I think this one will probably be good for Carl. Someone asked, I'm in the process of integrating Kubecost into our infrastructure, and we are considering using Terraform for implementation, starting with generating manifests using Helm template and then converting those into Terraform code via K2TF. Are there plans to include official documentation or a guide to support this method of integration in the future?
So integrating into various infrastructure as code tools is super important for trying to get the agent installed in as many places as possible. So it's definitely something that we encourage. I don't know if we're going to necessarily have that level of documentation in it, but it is always something that we can accept a contribution for. So if you're willing to write some of that, you can open a request in our documentation repository, and we can see if we can get that integrated.
Sweet. And when I send the post-event email out for this, I'll also include a link to our GitHub repository for everyone, so you all have access to that. The next question we had is, this will probably be a good one for Joe. Is it difficult to convince organizations to install agents? And most places I've worked for, people fear them. Also, do you usually sell through DevOps or FinOps?
Interesting questions. Agents, I guess, people have every right to be a little bit nervous about installing foreign agents, third-party agents into their network, right? I think it all comes down to trust. Do you trust the company? Do you trust the developers that built these agents? Is the utility of what you get from using installed agents worth the trade-off in terms of, some security or some compliance risk, or having just another moving thing in your environment that could break? I think it really comes down to trust. One of the things we're really proud of at Kubecost is that we are open core. We build open source software. We maintain open source software. We extend open source software. Any one of our customers, anybody that's using our tools, can go and interrogate the source code. They can go and look at exactly what is in there and exactly what it's doing. It's well documented. It's been pressure tested by millions of people every day. And so I think there's a high degree of trust and confidence in using our agents, but that might not be the same for every company and every team building software. The second half of that question was whether we sell to DevOps and FinOps. We've got a healthy mix of both, and both teams benefit from using our stuff. I hope that answers it.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. All right, we had a couple more pre-submitted questions, but just for the sake of time, let's go over to some of the live questions we got, because it looks like we have quite a few over there. So, Joe, if you wouldn't mind pulling those up and helping walk through those, that'd be great.
I actually have. Oh, go for it.
Carl, I was just going to hand this one off to you because I am not the right person to answer Carpenter-related questions. So Adrian's asking, does Carpenter 1.0 unlock some real-time idle costs? Because currently they lag by a couple of hours.
So yeah, we've seen the same thing, and that's part of the reason why you need the agent installed. So we don't depend on Carpenter to provide that information. We grab that information in real time through the agent. So that is one of the features of using us versus rather than depending on Carpenter to provide that information for you.
Second question from an anonymous attendee is, does the automated right-sizing capability, which we call Kubecost Actions, only do downsizing, or can it do upsizing also if needed?
I believe right now we're mostly focused on downsizing. And then again, the idea was to like tie this into places where you have things like Carpenter and some other automated workload systems in it. Upsizing is definitely something that we're working on as well for trying to see if we can make some recommendations. If you actually go into the recommendations page, we will recommend where we think this should be in larger instances rather than smaller ones. But at the moment, I do not believe we have that as an automation, but it is something that we are working on.
The second set of questions here from Vitali actually look a little bit more like a statement maybe than a question. I think he's mentioning that for workload efficiency, we're using a formula, and then he's pasted in a formula. I plead the fifth. I cannot verify whether that is the formula we are using or not. But
my recommendation would be to check the documentation. We do actually we're working on modifying all those formulas on a regular basis, especially as newer technologies like GPUs are being added into the system. So the formula might have is a little bit dated, but we do look at the demand pricing and the spot pricing for both of them. It's not just looking at demand pricing. So we are capturing a lot of that stuff.
Excellent. Thanks, Vitaly. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to drop another one in there. Ray is asking, if there's any integration between Kubecost and Carpenter. So for example, could he send a config recommendation from Kubecost to Carpenter and have Carpenter execute that recommendation?
Currently, no, but this is something that we are looking at in future releases.
Excellent. Let's see, I think we've got another one here from an anonymous attendee. Is there an ability to flag a Kubecost recommendation or insight as a false positive and persist it, or implement rules to hide things that only save, for example, less than, half of a cent, which isn't worth the time necessarily?
Yeah. Great feedback. I will be sure to get that to our product team. That is something that we can definitely look into for future releases.
I like that, having like a threshold that it has to meet before it starts to tell you to do something.
Yep.
So yeah, anonymous attendee, we will let you know when we've got that released, if you want to drop some contact information in with that. Great. Any other, I know we might have still had a pre-submitted question or two, or are we getting close to wrapping up on questions?
We have a couple more pre-submitted questions. Since we have a little bit of time, let's go ahead and try to cover the last of those. So this next one we had was, how can I activate automatic shutdown of EKS clusters?
So in order to activate that functionality, you need to actually install it has to be called what we call a primary cluster, which means the Kubecost backend needs to be running on that cluster. So you need to have the Prometheus, you need to have the Kubecost collector running in it. That will give it the appropriate permissions to be able to make changes to the cluster to support automatic shutdowns.
Great. This next one will probably be a good one for Joe. So someone asked, is there any way to customize OpenCost, for example, by tags, accounts, etc.?
Yes, OpenCost is very customizable and really can be customized using all of those kind of Kubernetes concepts that you mentioned in the question: tags, labels, namespaces. So it's very extensible, very customizable. I know that we've got some links and resources to a variety of documentation. Please check out the OpenCost documentation and see just how powerful the customization capability is there. The answer is yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Joe and Carl. If anyone has any other questions, as always, you're free to reach out to us directly at team@kubecost.com. We're more than happy to set up a customized demo and kind of get more in the weeds for whatever your specific use cases might be. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we will be sending out a link to the PDF, a recording of the webinar, and also all of the resources that I dropped in the chat throughout. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And then again, one lucky winner will get a super fancy or a real force mechanical keyboard. So I'll be reaching out to that lucky person tomorrow. Fingers crossed for all of you. And with that, that's it. If you're interested in any of our upcoming monthly Kube chats, be sure to check out our website. Our next one is happening in September, and it's all going to be about GPU efficiency monitoring. So we hope to see you there, and we'll give you some time back today. Thanks for joining, everyone.